Call the meeting to order. If you'd all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance. Supervisors, please take attendance. I am aware that Supervisor Decker will not be here this evening. She phoned me. I know Supervisor Rose is here. I saw him, so I believe the only one missing is Supervisor Decker. Underhill, please. No. Let's see, who has not? Celebree, Gable. And again, Supervisor Rose is in attendance, so we can mark him as being present. 27 in attendance. I don't know where he went. All right, we have a unique opportunity again this evening with our youth in governance, and I'm happy to see everyone here in the chamber tonight. And we have some recognitions to give out. So I'm going to ask Ms. Winnett to go to the microphone, and I will come down below with Supervisor Brunig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight will be our 5th group of students to participate in Youth in Governance. On behalf of the Kenosha County Board of Supervisors and Kenosha County UW Extension, we'd like to recognize the following youth for their outstanding contributions to Kenosha County through participation in the Kenosha County Youth in Governance program from last April 2010 through this month, May 2011. Before I do this, I want to take a moment and recognize those of you on the county board who have been serving as mentors for these youth during this last 12 months. They are Joe Clark, Boyd Frederick, Aaron Decker, Gail Gentz, Jeff Gentz, David Hallman, John O'Day, David Singer, and Rob Zerban. Thank you all very much. The program has had impact. On your desks tonight, you're going to find the annual report that's been prepared describing the value of the program from the youth perspective. I encourage you to take the time to review this and take note of that feedback that you hear. I think you're going to agree with me that it has made a difference in the lives of these young people. They speak to the value of having an opportunity to contribute their voices in county government, and that's because of the opportunity you've afforded them through this experience. So we'll now recognize those youth who've completed their term. When I call your name, please come forward to receive your certificate from Mark Molinaro, Chairman of the County Board, and Kim Brunig, Chair of the Planning and Development and Extension Education Committee. I'll ask that we hold our applause until all youth are recognized. So those youth who have been serving, this is your cue to start lining up behind me here. Dustin Beth, who has served on the Legislative Committee. David Capelli on Finance Committee. Tyler Durgener for Land Use Committee. Elizabeth Dumais, Highway and Parks Committee. Catherine Dumais, Joint Services. Haley Eagle, Joint Services. Jasmine Galindo, Building and Grounds. Kate Giroux, Building and Grounds. Kyle Henry, Land Use. Ryan Joseph has served on the Human Services Committee, and he wasn't able to be here this evening, but his parents, Prince and Elizabeth Joseph, are here this evening to accept Ryan's certificate. Jacob Tryon from Highway and Parks Committee. Katie Yarger from Administration Committee. Heather Zons, the Extension Education Committee. And we had one Youth and Governance member who has served 2 years. This second year, her committee responsibility was Judiciary and Law, and that's Alice Way. We're going to take a second and try to get a photograph here as best we can.
Okay, everybody, right here, big smile.
Thanks. As become a tradition with Youth and Governance, Alice is just going to take a brief opportunity to share some remarks about her experience. Alice has served for 2 years in Youth and Governance. She's going to be graduating June 5th from Tremper High School, and she will be attending UW-Madison in the fall.
Good evening. Hold on one second. So if you were to ask an average high schooler what government is, I mean, most of us would probably say the president or the U.S. Congress, and some of us might even mention the state Senate and House. But rarely do even the most informed teenagers know what happens at the local level of government, and I'll honestly admit that 2 years ago I was one of them. So after serving 2 years on the program, I've been amazed at everything Kenosha County does, you know, from transportation to health services and even to infrastructure. But more importantly, I've discovered that the leadership of Kenosha truly works for the citizens of the county. And it's so great knowing that I've been living, and we've all been living, in a place that's governed by leaders who truly care about their constituents. The Youth and Governance program informed us, it molded us into better leaders, and it gave us a unique opportunity to be seen as valued members of the community. So I'd like to thank Chairman Molinaro, the Board of Supervisors, and especially the UW Extension Committee and Department for providing this fantastic opportunity, and I can only hope that this program continues for many years to come.
This year, once again, there was a lot of interest in the Youth and Governance program. We received 186 nominations from 9 high schools throughout Kenosha County. That is incredible. Of those 186 nominations, 37 youth actually submitted an application. The Extension Education Committee interviewed 26 of those youth to recommend 14 names to County Board Chairman Molinaro. I want to thank the members of the Extension Education Committee for their work. Former Chairman Ron Johnson, Supervisors David Hallman, Boyd Frederick, David Arrington, and John Grulick. Thank you all very much. It's the result of your work that you're going to see tonight when these youth come forward. So now it is our chance to acknowledge and appoint the members of our 2011-2012 Youth and Governance. First, I will acknowledge the mentors. The Executive Committee mentor is Kim Brunig, Finance and Administration, Jeff Gens, Human Services, Aaron Decker, Joint Services, William Michael, Judiciary and Law, Rob Zerbin, Planning, Development, and Extension Education, David Hallman, and Public Works and Facilities Committee, Gail Gens. There are 10 new members to Youth and Governance tonight and 4 returning members for the 2-year stint. As I call your name, please walk forward to receive your official Kenosha County pin, as well as recognition from Chairman Mark Molinaro and Chairman of Planning, Development, and Extension Education Committee, Kim Brunig. Please hold your applause until all youth are recognized. Cole Andrakis for Judiciary and Law Committee. Trina Capelli, Planning, Development, and Extension Education Committee. Christopher Che, Human Services Committee. Christina Dalton, Public Works and Facilities. Gerlin Graywall, Joint Services Committee. Amir Kadri, Finance and Administration. Abby McDonald, Judiciary and Law. Christina Rendy, Executive Committee. Paige Schultz, Finance and Administration. Mia Williams, Joint Services Committee. Our 4 members returning for a second year with Youth and Governance: Dustin Beth, Public Works and Facilities. Kate Giroux, Human Services Committee. Heather Zahns, Planning Development and Extension Education. Megan Jackett is not able to be here tonight. She had a track meet, but she will be appointed to the Executive Committee. Join me in congratulating these outstanding Kenosha County young people. Thank you. Back.
Teddy, they're breaking your rules.
I know, we tried so hard.
And we even rehearsed this. First of all, I want to mention, not to single her out, but Chancellor Ford from UW Parkside is here this evening. So if you haven't been paying attention, here is the absolute cream of the crop in Kenosha County, and you should recruit before they leave this evening. I want to say thank you, first of all, to Teddy and her staff for all that they have done over the last 5 years. This is our 5th class of youth and governance students here in Kenosha County government, and I can't say enough about how exciting I get every year when we have the opportunity to thank those who have helped served over the last year and welcome the new group. And this year we have 4 returning, and it is, for me, a very special opportunity here on the board floor. And I want to thank Teddy, John DeMontmillon, all of the staff over there who just took this idea and have been so excited to carry it forward for the last 5 years. And the report you gave us this evening, I think, shows that not only was it the right thing to do 5 years ago, it continues to be the right thing to do. I want to thank all of the outgoing students and their parents for all that you've done and clearly have done and will continue to do to raise exceptional kids. Kenosha County, not just Kenosha County government, but Kenosha County in general clearly is in good hands. I have no concerns about our future when we look at 138 applications this time for what amounted to 14 positions with the county board. I encourage all of you to take advantage of all that you can. You've got a great group in front of you here, county board supervisors, county staff. Take advantage of any opportunity you can to learn and grow and understand what county government is all about. And take that back to your schools and make sure that your peers at school have a sense of the importance of what it is we do here and the passion that I think we all bring to the county board. So again, I want to welcome the new students, thank those who are on their way out. Encourage all of you. I've talked to so many tonight who are on their way to Minnesota to school and all over the country to go to school. Don't forget Kenosha County. We need you back here. Bring all those talents after your education if you're not staying local. And keep in mind we have great institutions here as well. But bring that talent back to Kenosha County. We need you here. It's clear we need you here. Bring what you can back to Kenosha County and help our community continue to grow and improve as I think it has over the last many years. So again, thank you, Teddy. I appreciate it. All the mentors who have helped out and will help out this year, I thank you as well.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, next order of business is citizen comments. Citizen comments are, and we can give a minute for those who want to leave, and that's fine. Citizen comments are limited to 5 minutes.
Question, Mr. Chairman. Chancellor Ford is here this evening to speak in support of resolution number 7. Did you want her to speak now or at the time of the resolution?
And I was going to address that.
Okay.
Certainly it is the preference of the Chancellor as well as yourself, Supervisor Celebree. I'm very comfortable having her speak at the time of the resolution, and probably would make some sense in case there's some questions that might want to be asked. So I appreciate that point.
Thank you.
Other than that, any citizens wishing to address the board, you'll have 5 minutes. Please approach a microphone, state your name and address. Any citizen comments?
Good evening. I'm Lou Sregani, 4526 29th Avenue. Wanted to speak about redistricting. I've been here a couple times, mostly at committees, speaking against the idea of creating race-based districts, which seems to me, and it gets the Supreme Court too, to be right out of the bad old days of the 1950s. I don't think this has a whole lot of support here, but I can tell you that it didn't pass the Supreme Court. In fact, they ruled against it when North Carolina tried just that back in 1992. Supreme Court decision. Well, Justice Anthony Kennedy went on to write that anybody who engages in racial stereotyping when they assume that minority voters, quote, think alike, share the same political interests, and will prefer the same candidate at the polls is misleading. I agree with that too. The Justice Department had a lot of pressure when they tried doing this. They tried doing minority-majority districts. It was in all the press back 19 years ago, as was the Supreme Court overturning of that. Of course, North Carolina spent a lot of money challenging it to no avail. Justice Sandra Day O'Connor actually wrote the majority opinion when that decision was made for the Supreme Court, by the Supreme Court, against not just North Carolina, but anybody else who tries districting based on race, on racial borderlines. Here's what she said, quote, classifications of citizens solely on the basis of race are by their very nature odious to a free people whose institutions are founded upon the doctrine of equality. She further warned that corralling minorities into separate voting districts, quote, threatens to carry us further from the goal of a political system in which race no longer matters, end quote. See, a lot of people say that minority voters don't get to elect minority representatives, they can't get represented. That sounds like something that's almost based on affirmative action. Because you're saying that by doing that, you meaning a generic term, North Carolina, that only minorities can represent minorities, and therefore you're also creating all majority districts, aren't you? By creating minority districts. No matter if it's 1 or 4, it's something right out of the past, the bad old days. And I remember those bad old days, being old enough. And this is something that the minorities fought against. They wanted just to be part of our group, the majority group. I watched all that happen from afar. They took a lot of guff, a lot of heat, but they made it. And now we're doing segregation. What other name would you use than segregation? By creating minority districts. I don't know, is there a different definition? Oh, he used the S word. Well, that's what it is. My advice is to, it was exactly 96 years ago yesterday that the county of Kenosha redistricted, and the news report said that it was a contentious meeting. But they finally settled on population-based districts, tried to get as many people as possible, not that it's ever perfect, to put within each district. In other words, the goal was a set figure, and that set figure was applying across the board. That's what the county board of 96 years ago did in a redistricting thing. Take it for what it's worth, but this is worse than ludicrous. It's against the 14th Amendment of the United States Equal Protection Amendment. I suggest before you make any move that you check not only with Corporation Counsel, which I believe will pretty much agree with that, not with me, but with the concept that this is wrong on a legal basis. I'm just saying it's wrong on a moral and legal basis. And I don't like to see the county fight this in some sort of a higher court should somebody complain. Not that anybody would. I thank you for your time and interest, and I urge you to do the right thing, which I know you will. Have a pleasant and productive evening.
Thank you. Mr. Rugani, I just want to point out, I'm not sure if you've seen the current maps. If you haven't, we might be able to get you a copy of them so you can take a look at them as well. Any other citizen comments? Any other citizen comments? Seeing no citizen approaching the microphone, citizen comments is closed. Announcements of the chair. I don't know where we're at with the numbers for those interested in attending the WCA, but if you are, you need to let the clerk know, and we will take them in either order of first come, first choice, or if there's an issue, I guess ultimately the chairman of the county board will make that decision. I want to recognize Judy Rossau, who is a longtime community business owner in Kenosha, as well as a former county board supervisor. She is going to be receiving the 2010 Lifetime Achievement Award on Sunday, May 22nd at the Anderson Arts Center. If anyone is interested in attending the reception, you can contact Kemper Center. Certainly, I think Judy is someone who has committed a significant amount of her time, talent, and treasure to improving Kenosha, city of Kenosha, Kenosha County. So I would urge all of you, if you're interested, to contact Kemper Center and recognize Judy on her 2010 Lifetime Achievement Award. Youth and governance, we've already talked about. I will leave that issue go. Executive Committee, I want to give you an update on the Executive Committee. We met for the first time the second Tuesday in May. A couple things that were discussed and that will be on upcoming agendas. First of all, the casino extension. Those of you, all of us are aware, we had a committee of the whole and a resolution to extend the casino IGA contract by 90 days, recognizing at that point in time that that was a short-term measure. We'll need to come back to the county board, and the will of the county board will determine where it goes from there. What we have done, based on points that were brought up at the committee of the whole meeting, as well as comments that I expressed, thoughts that came from the city side as well, we have a draft outline of expectations that will need to be met to provide for any extension, provide for an opportunity to renegotiate should that will be there. It addresses timelines and approval processes that may or may not come to fruition going forward. That draft is currently being reviewed by Corporation Counsel. It's been sent to the City of Kenosha, their attorney, city attorney. I sent it to the President of the Common Council, and the Executive Committee will take a look at it at the second meeting in July. Our intention there is to come to an agreement on the terms of any extension, not just the length of time, but the specificity to any reopeners, any payment of costs, etc. My intention would be to come to an agreement with the city ahead of any extension so that we don't have two different extensions if there is to be one, that we're in agreement on what that may or may not be. That'll be coming forward shortly. We discussed taking a look at our budget process. There'll be more discussion on that going forward as well. One issue that you saw in the paper, I believe it was today, maybe it was yesterday, is the potential to look at a position of an auditor that would potentially be under the county board budget. I think that is a position that at this point in time I believe deserves a significant amount of open-minded discussion about it. I would ask you to not close off that opportunity without understanding the specifics of it and the potential details and working through what may or may not be the requirements or the job description or the oversight to a position like that. And finally, we'll be addressing, in conjunction with the IT committee that Supervisor Hallman chairs, a little bit better definition and distribution of the meeting minutes, and an opportunity to provide the public with the availability to access our meeting minutes online. But if we, one thought is that if we draft our minutes accordingly, we can earmark with a time on the audio tape when each subject matter comes up, so resident could quickly go to the website, quickly pull up that audio of the meeting, and very easily scroll to a time spot and listen to a specific issue without having to listen to, say, maybe the chairman comments or something for that matter. So we'll have more discussion on that. We'll work with the IT committee and try to find an opportunity to bring a resolution forward to the county board. This evening we're going to be voting on a draft plan or tentative plan for the redistricting. I think we certainly have a little bit of work to do yet, but I think the bulk of it has been done. I want to take this opportunity to recognize Al Brockmeyer and his staff for the hard work that they put into the redistricting. I know it wasn't easy. I will say that without exception, on certain occasions when I may not have taken the request to make a change as easily as Al did and his team did, there's no question that they took it all in stride and continued to work to what I believe is a map that we can all support here. You know, recognize that any time we asked for a change, the most recent change to one district, a very small area, resulted in modifications to 5 other districts. So not only is this a complicated process that clearly we have the experience in Al and his team, given that he's been through this before, but we ask him to do it at a time that is extremely busy for his office. So Al, I recognize the effort that you put forth. I realize we're not done, but I think the heavy lifting is behind us. So to both of you, I appreciate the effort and the way in which you went about it. I need to thank the committee, obviously. Again, work yet to do, but Vice Chairman Eckerness, I think handled a relatively difficult situation very well. I was certain when I appointed the committee that I had the right makeup, and I am even more certain, having gone through the process, that we had the right team in place and the right committee in place to analyze, listen to the discussion, ask the questions, and come forward with plans that I think are, again, plans that we can support. Unfortunately, although you know how I am, I'm going to address the issue of the accusations that this committee was somehow partisan or not objective in their efforts. I don't know how you can suggest that a committee wasn't objective when they offered every opportunity to everyone on this county board to be a part of that process. I don't know how you can suggest that a committee was not objective or somehow partisan when they looked at the litany of maps and alternatives that were looked at, even to the point where those who were critical of the makeup of the committee made comments such as, well, how many maps are we going to look at? We're A through G or whatever the number we were. Is it going to be AA and BB? So I guess the issue there is you can't make everybody happy all of the time. I don't know how you can suggest a committee wasn't objective when we had the public, 3 groups in particular, the NAACP, LULAC, and Cush, all expressed concerns. So we met with them, the committee met with them, the committee reached out to them, the committee held an additional public hearing. I'm not sure how you can suggest that they weren't objective or somehow were partisan in their decision making. We had requests that came from Supervisor Singer. That request was honored. We had a request to change a district that included Supervisor Boyd Frederick. That request was honored. We had a request for a change by Supervisor Arrington. That request was honored. We had a request by Supervisor Clark to look at the minority makeup. That request was denied. Member of the committee. One that skews and is non-objective. We had a request by Supervisor Clark to adjust a line in the town of Summers. I'm sorry, in the town of Village of Pleasant Prairie, keeping in mind the ones I pointed out that were approved were all line adjustments. The request by Supervisor Clark was denied. Again, one of your non-objective committee members. So at the end of the day, do I think we had a nonpartisan? Do I think we had an objective committee to take a look at it? You bet. And the reason I say that is because if I'd had my druthers on how these maps were drawn, the very supervisor who leveled the criticism in the newspaper, the supervisor from the 4th District, and I, would have been in the very same district from day one. So, was it objective? Absolutely. Because the committee certainly didn't follow my recommendation. And that's the way that would have mapped out from day one. And there would have been other structures that certainly wouldn't have been as cooperative and cordial to the matchups of supervisory districts. And I find it increasingly interesting that the very criticisms are leveled by individuals who will wear pins into this chamber and other county meetings with words on them that are clearly partisan, but more importantly are words that many in our community would find to be offensive, if not flat out vulgar. But then I'm going to be criticized that I set up a committee that is somehow partisan. Keep in mind this is a nonpartisan office, and I hope we continue to keep that in mind as we go forward. With that, chairman comments are closed. Supervisor reports. Supervisor Elverman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very briefly, we haven't met in a couple weeks from highways and facilities, but a couple comments. You had asked a couple weeks ago, or at our first meeting of the month, for me to look into the employees and the contractors working on the courthouse remodeling and reconstruction. At the time of the hiring, there was some questioning of the company being from Chicago and us needing to ensure that we had Wisconsin people working on this project, and they had ensured that they would. But I'm going to get a monthly report on this. As of this month, now this could be a % or two off and an employee or two off because of construction. There's been rain, there's been all kind of problems. But there's 19 people working on the project from Wisconsin. 5 are from Kenosha County, and that accounts for 85% of the employees on the job at this time. So 85% of the employees are from Wisconsin, 5 from Kenosha County. The training for these people, a lot of it was done right across the street at the school, and many of these people were from Wisconsin at that time. So I'll as we go along, I'll keep you updated on that. Highways, we've had a rough month with the weather. We have some major reconstruction projects going on. Highway O out in the county that I see every day, and then everything else we've got going on. Petrifying Springs with the bike paths, and reconstruction on some other main road projects that are behind schedule, weather related. And I know this is a lament that a lot of people get tired of, but we once again, because of the weather, many problems because it's been on the weekends at the golf courses. So we're not doing very well at all there. But that's a brief report. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other? Supervisor Clark.
A report from Finance and Administration Building. We had Finance and Administration. We had a report on the Public Safety Building project. That project is virtually complete right now. It came in within budget. There's about $100,000 to $150,000 surplus. They're looking at spending that money within the scope of the project to have engineering plans for the kitchen and energy savings projects. Those plans will be brought to the proper oversight committee. One comment in there, I thought they talked about redoing this, just the fan in the kitchen. It was gonna, the payback on that was phenomenal. The cost of just the fan may have been $100-some thousand and $35,000 a year energy savings, the hood. Redesigning the kitchen so we can use to have some of the inmates be able to do work. Currently, the way it's structured, we can't. So those are pretty innovative ideas, future savings ideas that they're thinking about. From the state level, many of you have been following. They're working on the budget. There's going to be tight limits on the local property taxes. What they're talking about is that the first 2 years will be at a freeze plus new growth. And the construction is really slowed down. And then the years beyond that, they're going to be at 1.5% or new growth, whatever's higher. Those are the current limits. We have a budget levy resolution that we normally bring back to the county board in June. We're going to continue to bring that resolution back, even though it's somewhat being done for us by the state. I hope that as we discuss that resolution, that maybe there's more discussion on budget priorities, some of the things that you want to see done, some of the things that you want to see us do to balance the budget. I don't want to speak out of school, but a $5 million number rings in my head right now from what I was told, and that's after considering some of the benefits from employee contribution to pensions. So we have a hole to fill. A big portion of that $5 million hole has to do with the income maintenance positions down at the job center. I would suggest that that's one issue that you take a look at, talk to our elected officials, have them support having those positions be done at the local level where our citizens that need those services can see a face that can understand, a face that can evaluate fraud in whether someone's right to do it. It's important now, as this budget is working its way through the state, that we make that call. That's probably the biggest area for Kenosha County. And in talking with County Executive Cruiser, it's normally the human services are about the last part of the budget. And when they get to that point, everybody got their money or all their programs and everything lined up, and it's just kind of the game's over, and human services may get cheated. So stay on top of that. I think that's a big issue. Get educated, contact our representatives and let them know how you feel about it. Brookside, we had some concerns over Brookside closing with a deficit last year. I met with Lori Staves and the director of Brookside. They are going to come back to the next finance committee meeting and present a financial report. More importantly, we want to understand what happened last year, but more importantly, we want to be able to look forward and make sure that that's not happening again, that we have close monitoring and we're adjusting as need be. They have represented that Brookside is running at about a break even right now. We had a brief financial review for 2011. I think it was through May 12th or through April, end of April. Sales tax collections are up compared to budget. As you recall, in being conservative and making sure we didn't have any holes, we pulled the sales tax numbers down, so that is at least encouraging that we're not creating a hole there and potentially that we would have a surplus. Tax collections have been at a better pace than they were historically, which hopefully means that tax delinquencies are going to be going down, and that's going to help us in our general fund. So that is my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other supervisor reports? Seeing none. Clerk.
Ordinance, one reading. Bank Mutual Incorporated owner, Meds Medical Agent, requests a rezoning from A2 General Agricultural District to I1 Institutional District in the town of Summers. Approved by Planning Development Extension Education Committee. Brunig, yes. Esposito, yes. Kohlmeyer, yes. Underhill, yes. Decker, yes. Hallman, yes. Gable, yes.
As with the previous time this issue was on the board floor, I will pass the gavel to the Vice Chairman.
Move ordinance number 1.
Moved by Supervisor Brunig, seconded by Supervisor Esposito. On the question? Oh, Supervisor Bruning.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. These properties are located in the southwest corner of 12th Street and 72nd Avenue. The rezoning would allow an assisted living facility for residents with respiratory needs. The Town of Summers recommended approval of this request.
Any further comment?
Noble.
Supervisor Noble?
Somebody was coughing or something. I didn't hear what she said was going to be going on that corner.
An assisted living facility with, for residents with respiratory problems.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions or comments? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it.
Resolution number 7 from Supervisors Rose and Celebrity, a resolution supporting the Wisconsin Idea Partnership proposal.
Supervisor Rose.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The resolution before you normally would be referred by the chair to committee for consideration, but because of what we believe to be the urgency of the situation, and we did invite Chancellor Ford to be with us this evening, I would ask the consent of the body and propose that the rules be suspended this evening so that the resolution can be considered tonight and acted upon, and I would so move to suspend the rules.
Second.
Moved by Rose to suspend the rules, second by Supervisor Celebrity. On the issue of suspending the rules, is there any debate? Supervisor Celebrity, you're the light. Would you like to debate then? No other lights. All those in favor of suspending the rules signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Supervisor Rose.
All right, I would move the resolution.
Resolution number 7, moved by Supervisor Rose, seconded by Supervisor Celebrity. Supervisor Rose.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And before I introduce this resolution with some comments, I would ask you if you would recognize Chancellor Deborah Ford to address this body, to give you some insight on the resolution itself and its urgency. Thank you.
I trust there'll be no opposition from the floor. Chancellor Ford. I will need you to state your name and address, please.
Deborah Ford, and home address or campus address?
Campus is fine.
900 Wood Road, Summers. Chairman Molinaro, Supervisor Rose, Supervisor Celebre, thank you very much, and all supervisors, thank you very much for the opportunity to address you this evening and talk about the importance of the University of Wisconsin Parkside and our commitment and support of the Wisconsin Idea Partnership. As you know, the University of Wisconsin Parkside is 43 years old, and we are focused on celebrating our 50th anniversary in 2018. We now have 20,000 graduates at the University of Wisconsin Parkside and celebrated our most recent commencement on Saturday, where we awarded over 500 degrees, and 60% of the students who crossed the stage were the first in their families to receive a degree, and we were very excited about that. The other thing that's really important, I believe, for you to know and remember is that 75 to 80% of our graduates live, reside, work, lead, and contribute right here in Kenosha County, southeastern Wisconsin, and northern Illinois. We serve as your public four-year university, and we are 5,000 students strong. And I'm very happy tonight that my colleague, Teddy, is here, and because of our partnership with UW Extension, and I look forward to meeting those students you're working with and bringing them to our campus. I am asking for your support for the Wisconsin Idea Partnership, and the summary of the Wisconsin Idea Partnership is that our legislature will grant management flexibilities from current state bureaucracies to all campuses of the University of Wisconsin system. We are asking to be relieved of some of the 20th century bureaucracy so that we can employ and use 21st century thinking as we address the challenges and provide for quality public higher education. We also believe that the Wisconsin Idea Partnership provides for one united and unified system of world-class public higher education, and I do not support Madison becoming its own public authority. I have brought along with me some additional materials that describe the Wisconsin Idea Partnership in more detail, and also a letter signed by all of the chancellors in the University of Wisconsin system, including
the deans at the 13 UW College campuses. Chancellor Martin's signature is not on this letter. And I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I do appreciate your support, and I, most importantly, want to invite you to campus if you have not been there in a while. We love being a partner with Kenosha County, so thank you.
It can be rough if you haven't been there in a while to navigate the construction, but that's always a good sign. So.
That's right.
If you could, Chancellor, give those documents to Supervisor Johnson, we can make sure they get distributed. Okay. Supervisor Rose.
All right, thank you. Let me just add a few remarks, and perhaps Supervisor Celebrity would like to also, as he is one of the authors of this resolution as well. There is a proposal in the legislature today to break up the University of Wisconsin system. Historically, if you recall, each one of the campuses originally was autonomous. University of Wisconsin, Madison was autonomous, as was Milwaukee, and we had a university extension here in Kenosha. Under the leadership of Governor Patrick Lucey, the Wisconsin system was created, and all of the university campuses were part of the University of Wisconsin system, and thus became University of Wisconsin Parkside. That University of Wisconsin degree lends status, prestige, authority, being part of the Parkside, being part of that overall program. The severance of that university system, I think, will diminish campuses like Parkside, like Oshkosh, like Stevens Point, and all the rest. It may very well enhance the University of Wisconsin, Madison, as they will have the authority to grab the lion's share of the money, and we will be fighting for the crumbs from the table. We will become the poor relations. It'll be far more difficult, I see it, for the University of Wisconsin Parkside to grow and expand, and this is part of the future direction, as I see it, of the city and county of Kenosha. For the 20th century in Kenosha, this was an industrial community. We had the great names of Nash and Frost and Arneson and American Brass, and the list goes on and on. That is no longer our future. If you have a future, if you have a vision of Kenosha in the 21st century, that vision must include a strong higher education component. University of Wisconsin Parkside, Carthage College, Gateway Technical College, all part of that vision of the future. And that vision of the future, I think we must support that and encourage it, and tell our legislators here from this Kenosha-Racine area who represent us that on a bipartisan, nonpartisan basis, they must support the continuance of the present system. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Celebrity.
Thank you, Your Honor. That's a bit of a hard act to follow without being duplicative. I believe, though, it's very clear that what we're looking for in this resolution is to notify our area legislators that we support the system as it is presently intact. This may become just the beginning of a slippery slope that we would not want to find ourselves facing, where first Madison, eventually other campuses may spin off, and we really want to be able to fortify the youth that we saw in front of us. And I believe that this is the opportune moment for us to act at this point, and I feel strongly on this measure because I am tied with Parkside as an alumni there myself, and also I believe that there's a lot of good that comes from it. And I believe the system as a whole has much to afford the community and the state. So I would urge your support for the measure. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Celebrity. Supervisor Brunig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a member of the Cooperative Extension Resource Advocacy Network and a huge supporter of cooperative extension, I just want to remind everyone here that they should be contacting their legislators at this time. I am in support of this resolution. I did speak with Representative Kirkman this morning. She is in full support of the WIP program of the partnership. She feels that there will probably be a compromise, and it will still allow the university to stay intact. but it will also allow them to have the flexibility to be able to do their hiring and whatnot that they wanted to do. So that is what she has referred to me this morning, and I hope that everyone will support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Hallman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize. As a six-term student government senator and the former president of Parkside Rainbow Alliance, I sort of feel like I have to break off a piece of the tree here. One of the things that makes Parkside unique in our backyard, and I've been to a number of campuses throughout the nation, from California to New York, Florida, Texas, one of the things that makes ours unique is the commitment to equal access. And that's something that you don't hear from a lot of campuses, public or private, around the nation. And the state share and the student share, the state share used to be 60%, the student share used to be 40%. That was 10 years ago in terms of the tuition. Now it's flipped. The student share is 60%, the state share is 40%, and there's more support being provided by the federal government to colleges than the states. So to keep the UW system together as a whole by supporting the Wisconsin Idea Partnership is something that we definitely need to do as people continue to have difficult economic times, and the importance of a degree still stands in our economy. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chancellor Ford, I just want to know a little bit more about this Wisconsin Idea Partnership, and specifically, I understand that we want to keep the UW system together, but decentralizing management, I guess, what's that change and how's that going to operate or make the UW system better?
There are two premises to the partnership. First is we stay united as one system of public higher education. The second premise is that we are asking for changes in state statutes that have been layers and layers of bureaucracy that have been added over time. That one-page handout that I provided, it summarizes 6 areas of flexibilities that we are requesting. One of the areas is how we receive our funding. We would like to have our funding, as opposed to being in separate silos, we'd like to have that in block grants, so that then we can make sure that the highest needs, in order to operate our campuses in a 24/7 environment, in order to meet our academic mission, we're able to fund the highest priorities. Right now, as our money comes in for utilities, if we are good, as we are good stewards of those dollars, because we are, and as our efforts for conservation and energy savings and sustainability are paying off, and when we have a warmer winter in Wisconsin, those savings do not revert back to the campus. They actually go back to the state. So what we're asking to do is to be able to use those. Another piece is on tuition. Right now, the interest earnings on our tuition dollars do not stay with the campuses or with the system. They go back to the state. So we're asking to have the flexibility that we need to lead an organization in the 21st century. So those are 2 examples.
Thank you.
Any other supervisor comments or questions of the Chancellor? Seeing no lights. All those in favor of Resolution 7 signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Chancellor Ford, I appreciate you coming.
Thank you very much, and please come to our campus anytime. Thank you.
You know I do. Supervisor Rose.
May I suggest that we send this to all of the area legislators, including those who represent both Walworth County and Racine County, as well as the Kenosha, as well as the governor.
We'll make sure that that happens.
All right, thank you.
I will also, we're looking to schedule a meeting with our area legislators and the executive committee as soon as we can, and we'll make sure that point of discussion when we have that opportunity. Clerk.
Resolution 8 from the Finance Administration Committee, a resolution to approve the placement of an Assistant Superintendent of Golf in the non-represented employee pay plan. Clark, yes. O'Day, yes. Gens, yes. Akernis, yes. Rose, no. Singer, yes. Grady, yes.
Supervisor Clark.
I move Resolution 8.
Resolution 8 moved by Clark, seconded by Supervisor O'Day. Supervisor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Resolution 8 is reclassifying a current employee that is in Local 1090 as an assistant superintendent and reclassifying the position as a management non-rep position, assistant superintendent of golf. This change is what the administration and the oversight committee has been looking for in the management to allow them to have the flexibility to have the employees work when they need them to work. Currently, under the current system with this employee, they're limited to 40 hours, or if they're working more than that, they're paying time and a half. This employee has agreed to this change. As you recall, when we adopted the local 1090 budget, or the contract, that contract was going to phase out as the employees retired off, with the view in mind that the golf course would be able to have more full permanent or more part-time seasonal employees, where we're paying an hourly rate. You don't have the cost of the benefits. This assistant superintendent, as I understand it, Ms. Lori Stanek, does have her agronomy degree. She's primarily going to be functioning out of the Petrifying Springs golf course. Mr. David Hassel is the superintendent of grounds. He pretty much handles the Brightendale course, and that has 45. So his time is stretched to have management on both courses. This is replacing a position that retired. Previously, if you look a couple pages in, there's a fiscal resolution on the assistant golf superintendent, and from the way that we were structured prior to the retirement of the various different greenskeeper and park maintenance person, the total cost was $235,000. The cost of this restructure is going to cost us $119,000, saving us $117,000 roughly, while maintaining 5 full-time equivalents. So this is something that gives us the flexibility. It gives us the savings that we're trying to accomplish in making the golf at least sustainable. So I urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Rose.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I voted against this resolution in committee, and I'm going to vote against it this evening because I don't think that it attacks the fundamental problem here of the golf course deficit. We're not talking about a year's deficit of $500,000. We're talking about year after year after year, and I cited that history to you on one other occasion. We're talking about deficits that stretch well beyond 10 years. Golf hasn't sustained itself for a long, long time. And you ask yourself, well, what's the fundamental problem? And I understand this is a Band-Aid approach, and I understand that there's an effort to make it work, and there's some savings shown on paper. And we've done that before because we never deal with the fundamental problem. And the fundamental problem of golf is that we have 65 holes, and there isn't a demand for 65 holes. What private or public golf course can you think of maintains 65 holes? I can think of none. You'd have to have a population expansion in this community of a substantial nature, most of whom would be playing golf. You'd have to have young people coming up in the thousands to sustain 65 holes to make this a profitable situation. And when I say profitable, I mean that this is a course that has to be profitable because it competes with something in the private sector. It's not like highways, it's not like a park, it's not like public welfare or social services. There is no competing highway system, but there are all kinds of, we don't have to be in the golf business, in other words. So you have to have an expectation here that this is going to be profitable. And until we cut down the number of holes, we're not going to have any kind of long-term solution. If we were going to build this Brightendale again, we'd be satisfied with 18 holes there and 18 holes at Petrifying Springs, and we would be in a profitable situation, and we wouldn't continue to bring forward resolutions which don't deal with the fundamental issue but deal with side issues. That's why I'm going to vote against this resolution this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Clark.
I'll be brief. I raised the issue of the number of holes previously. There is a study that is currently that is underway. It's my understanding that that's going to go to the Oversight Committee and the Finance and Administration Committee, I believe, in August. So we are, I believe, addressing that fundamental problem. This resolution tonight is addressing 1/3 of the deficits that we had in the last 2 years. So there's savings. We're going to recognize that. Fundamental problem is you got to cut your expenses, and this is one way that we're doing it. Another way is to consider the reduction of the number of holes and how that impacts the level of service. To say the golf courses are a profit center, one would have to say the parks are a profit center or need to be a profit center. They add to the quality of life for the residents of Kenosha County. With the new team that is in there, I don't golf much, but I was out there last year and I was amazed. Talk to the golfers that are on this county board and talk to the residents, and I bump into them. It's phenomenal, the conditions of the play, and it's because we have the quality people. We have the agronomist, and here we have another position that we're going to be able to hold on to. I forgot to mention that this person's compensation, I believe, is going to come in at about $58,000. Is that the correct number? 57. So last year on that position, we spent about $66,000 in wages. So there's not going to be any overtime or anything like that. So again, I would urge your approval.
Thank you. Supervisor Elverman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the things I've been preaching for years, publicly and privately, and I know people don't really want to say it sometimes here publicly, is that you can't run a business like this with all union employees. When I say all union employees, I mean all people that get overtime, make $60-some thousand a year, and the private golf courses have a manager, and then they have groundskeepers, and they have part-time people, and that's what we've been pushing for years. That's what our agreement with the 1090 union has set up for us, where eventually we have no union there. I think we're going to be down to, how many employees? 2. And they've agreed to this. That's going to be gone, and it's going to be gone shortly. You can then set up situations like this, where we're saving $116,000. This person is currently working for us, but if they work for us on Saturdays and Sundays, they are in a management position. We're paying overtime. No longer a factor. There is no overtime. Non-represented, the person in charge there, this is how it should be, and this is going to get us one step closer. No, it's not perfect at all. We're still, as Supervisor Rose said, we may have 40 holes too many by the time this season's over, but this is certainly a step that we've been after and something that's desperately needed. So I would urge your support for this, for the current savings.
Thank you, Supervisor Elverman. Any other comments? Seeing no lights. Roll call is requested. If you're in favor of Resolution 8, P and plus, opposed, P and minus. One more. Who are we missing here? I got it. Motion carries 26-1.
Resolution 9 from the Finance Administration Committee, a resolution implementing tax code pickup of employee retirement contributions pursuant to Internal Revenue Code, State Statute 414H2. Finance Administration Clark, yes. O'Day, yes. Jeff Gens, yes. Akernis, yes. Rose, yes. Singer, yes. Grady, yes.
Supervisor Clark.
I move Resolution 9.
Resolution 9 moved by Supervisor Clark, second by Supervisor Jeff Gens. Supervisor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Resolution 9 is really forward-thinking here, and I have to give compliments to our auditors, Baker Tilly, Virchow Kraus. They sought a legal opinion about making this change. County employees by state statute, are mandated to be in the Wisconsin retirement system. There's an employee portion and an employer portion. That portion, the employee portion, for most of our employees at the current time is picked up by the county, so there's no issue. It's a non-taxable fringe to them, and it's a deduction. If your employer had a pension and they paid a pension, it wouldn't affect your W-2, and the employer would be able to deduct that. With the potential change in the state law where county employees are going to have to contribute to the mandated, make a mandated contribution to the retirement system, under the current laws, if we do nothing, those deductions would be after tax. So it's kind of like in the individual income tax sense, if you make a Roth contribution, it's non-deductible. So they're going to be paying for that with after-tax dollars if we do nothing. And then when they take the dollars out of the retirement system, they're going to pay taxes on it. By making this change, and the Internal Revenue Code requires us to act affirmatively in this regard and have a plan, this is going to allow those deductions to be after tax. So it's like, again, why do you put money into your 401k? You get the current tax benefit, the current tax savings. It's the same thing for the employees. They're required to make contributions, or they will be required if this law changes, and we want to afford them the benefit of the tax savings. So this is a no-brainer for the employees of Kenosha County. This is really levy neutral, no impact to the county. And before I let the floor go, I will just ask Mr. Riedel, if there anything we need to add, or did I cover it appropriately? Thank you.
I thought that was a little strong, but we can go with great. Supervisor Holman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to Mr. Riedel.
With your permission, I'll bring Dave Gertzen too, just in case I get into trouble.
And Mr. Gertzen.
Yes, sir.
This affects county supervisors too, does it not?
The supervisors, I don't believe, are paying pre-tax today, but if the law, the budget repair bill, or that language gets in the state budget that eventually gets adopted, then it would impact the board too.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Thank you. Supervisor Zerban.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to Supervisor Clark, or perhaps Mr. Gertzen, this would only take effect or be needed once the law is changed, correct?
This will take effect immediately. We do have employees that are on probation that aren't eligible for the employer match, so that it'll have a minor effect because there's very few people that fall into that category, but this will affect them. So whether we pass the law or not, or whether the law gets passed or not, it's still a good thing. It's levy neutral. It's a benefit to those employees that are on probation and haven't met the requirement to have the employer contribution.
Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Noble.
I think I understand it as it's explained, but some of the wording in the resolution is confusing, particularly in the first whereas. It says, provided that the contributions are paid by the employer in lieu of contributions by the employee, which makes me think that we're committing ourselves to continue to contribute for the employee, which, if the law should change, we wouldn't have to. I guess the language, your explanation I understand fully, but I don't know that I quite understand some of the language that's in these whereases. It's in the middle of the first whereas, provided that the contributions are paid by the employer in lieu of contributions paid by the employee.
It sounds like tax code, but we'll let Dave handle that one.
Mr. Gertz.
And that is tax code, and that's the language recommended by Foley. Kenosha County is required to commit to picking this up, and that's the actual verbatim language in an IRS ruling, a 2006 IRS ruling. But if you look on the second page under item 2, then also Kenosha County requires that that picked up amount be deducted from the wages. It says these pickup contributions will be withheld from employee wages as a condition of employment. So that's the way that works. So it's a wash.
Okay, so 2 washes out
Right.
the first whereas.
Right. That's right.
I understand the concept and the explanation, like I said, but the wording in this resolution is confusing.
Just to be clear then on Supervisor Noble's question, long-term, we have, this resolution addresses the issue he's raising.
Yes, it does. This does not commit Kenosha County to have to pick that up and fund it with a levy or some other revenue. It commits the county to picking it up, but then commits every employee as a condition of employment to having it deducted from their wages.
Okay. Any other questions, Supervisor Noble?
Yes.
You're done. Supervisor Ron Frederick.
Question for Dave. So that we get that clear, that would the employee would be, Social Security would come out before that happened?
That's right. FICA is still covered.
Okay, so because
Social
some
Security
people might not want to have their FICA reduced when they're getting close to retirement.
Right. No, it doesn't impact OASDI or Medicare, the FICA deduction. That is still intact and is still deducted.
Thank you. Supervisor Zerban.
I'm just trying to get this clear in my own head. With this resolution, basically what we're doing is we're saying that Kenosha County is going to be picking up the retirement portion, but as a part of their agreement for employment, the employee agrees to actually pay for it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, now my question would be to you, is this, let me just do a for instance, let's say the law that was passed doesn't, it's held up in the courts right now, but let's just say the courts strike it down. And we would still have this on our books as forcing our employees to pay their share of their retirement, correct?
Only if you look at under item 2, the bold section, when such employee contributions are required under 2011 Act 10 or similar Wisconsin law or Kenosha County requirement.
Can you help me translate that a little bit?
Okay, what that means is if we adopt a law, if the state adopts a law or the county adopts a requirement that the employee pay for part or all of the employee contribution, then this takes effect, but only under that condition.
That we adopt this?
You would have to adopt a separate provision, or the state would have to adopt. Right now, the state is considering in Budget Repair Bill Act 10 requiring employees to contribute this. The county also could do that. You know, you could do that separately. This does not do that. This bill before, or this resolution before you today does not do that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on Resolution 9? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
Resolution 10 from Judiciary and Law and Finance Administration Committees regarding Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force Supplement. Michael, yes. Haas, yes. Ron Johnson, yes. Singer, yes. Excused, Ron Frederick, Grulich, and Zerban. Admin and Finance Committee, Clark, yes. O'Day, yes. Jeff Gens, yes. Singer, yes. Akernis, yes. Rose, yes. Grady, yes.
Supervisor Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move Resolution 10.
Resolution 10 moved by Supervisor Michael, seconded by Supervisor Clark. Supervisor Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This resolution basically gives us the $10,000 from the Federal Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Forces, which the money goes directly to the KDOG officers that work with the federal government in their war on drugs. So I urge your support on this.
Thank you. Any other comment? If not, I believe this is a roll call vote, correct? Is this a budget modification? All those in favor of Resolution 10, P and plus, those opposed, P and minus. Motion carries 27-0.
Resolution 11 from Judiciary and Law regarding probationary cabaret license, Boys Lakeside Pub and Grill. Michaels, yes. Haas, yes. Johnson, yes. Singer, yes. Ron Frederick, excused.
Supervisor Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move Resolution 10.
Resolution 10 moved by Michael, seconded by Haas. Supervisor Michael.
Thank you. This is for a probationary, this resolution is for a probationary cabaret license for Bowie's Lakeside Pub and Grill located at 39408 Bloomfield Road, Powers Lake, Wisconsin. The Sheriff's Department did conduct their inspection. It did pass the inspection. I urge your support for this probationary cabaret license. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone on the issue? If not, all those in favor of Resolution 11 signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries.
Resolution 12 from the Redistricting Committee regarding adoption of revised supervisory district boundaries for 2012-2022. Eckerness, Clark, Decker, Michael, and O'Day.
Vice Chairman Eckerness.
I move Resolution 12.
Resolution 12 moved by Vice Chairman Eckerness, seconded by Supervisor Clark. Vice Chairman.
The Redistricting Committee met a number of times reviewing a number of maps, and after 2 public hearings, the second of which we heard recommendations from other supervisors that were not on the committee, as well as members of the public, notably the NAACP, LULAC, and Cush, recommending the map that you see before you tonight. The committee voted unanimously to recommend the map that you have before you tonight.
Thank you. Supervisor Hallman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to congratulate the Redistricting Committee on bringing us these maps. They are a substantial improvement from some of the other things that were in committee that did not make it out. As I'm sure many people know, I expressed my discontent with one of those particular maps, and I wish to apologize to the gentleman of the 21st District, whom I angered by expressing some of my heartfelt sentiments. In all honesty, it would seem that the nature of the work that we do sometimes lends us to be suspicious of one another. Sometimes even when we have strong friendships, I guess it's perhaps taboo to say that out loud. So I apologize for offending the gentleman of the 21st District. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Rose.
Thank you. I was not a member of the committee, but I did attend all of the committee meetings, and I thought that the committee did a very objective, thorough job of analyzing it, relying heavily upon the professional staff as well as the use of computers. I did not detect any kind of partisanship here or attempt to favor any particular group as opposed to depreciating the value of some other interests. The proposal, in my view at least, respects the idea, the basic concept of one person, one vote, and that is the fundamental standard in judging all of the redistricting propositions that are presented to various legislative bodies throughout this country, and I view this one as meeting that objective as well. It also satisfies the other types of criteria that are used by courts in determining the legality, such as does the particular district represent a community of interest. I would say that what you have before you does. Are each one of those particular districts compact And if you look at the various districts, I think under the circumstances they are. Of course, there are some rural districts by virtue of population which are larger than some of the urban districts. But more importantly, each one of the districts have approximately the same number of votes, the same number of potential voters. And that was one of the criteria I think the staff attempted to meet, was that each one of the particular districts are of a similar size. So the populations are comparable. I congratulate and commend the committee for doing an excellent job, and I'm going to wholeheartedly support it this evening.
Thank you. Supervisor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we had a very good committee process. Started with a resolution to downsize the county board. Part of that conversation in downsizing the county board in those public hearings, we heard about minority representation as a concern. As an advocate for downsizing the county board, I took that to heart. I reached out to the minority community. I put a proposal out there that I thought was better for the community. I think it is supported by a Supreme Court ruling. There was a gentleman here tonight that I certainly don't agree with, and as he talks about the Supreme Court and what they did, I have a ruling right here, Thornburg and Gingles. It was a 9-0 vote, and it certainly talks about I want to find this, if you forgive me for a second to find it. Maybe I'll hand it out, but essentially what it said was you had to give the minority community the ability or the choice to elect the candidate of their choice. And that's what I try to do. But at the same time, to be a good supervisor, to be a good representative of the people, you have to listen. So I did listen. I supported ultimately what the community wanted, what the community stepped forward and said they wanted. I think in this process, it's unfortunate that one had to bring up partisanship. I don't think it was a partisan process. I think we tried to accommodate everybody's request. We tried to understand all the issues. I looked at Wisconsin County guidelines. I mean, I think we did exactly what we were asked to do. We have, in my opinion, a bulletproof plan. I don't think if there ever were a challenge that it would stand, because we had the leadership of the communities of interest step up and be part of this process. So I think the process went well. We afforded them every opportunity under the tight time constraints by holding an additional public hearing to give them their voice. So I would urge that we have unanimous approval. I mentioned in the committee, I did present the various different plans to the Village of Pleasant Prairie. They do have concerns with, as we call it, this is the A map for the city, the D map for the county. They do have concerns with the D map for the county. This is a recommendation at this point in time. This map is now going to the municipalities to draw their wards and do all those things. I mentioned last night, I'm going to support D. I think it's the best plan out there. There may be a need or a request by the village, if it works, to look at how those boundaries are drawn, but they would only affect 16, 17, and 18. So, again, I just want to thank you for appointing me to the committee. I took it to heart, and as part of that process to make sure people weren't running, I announced early that I was not going to seek my position, and that certainly helped make one more supervisor not have to run against another. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chairman Eckerness.
Before we vote, I have to make a motion to correct the following typos. They exist in the last paragraph where it says, "Now therefore be it resolved that the attached plan," strike the S, labeled as exhibit, strike the S, 1, which is, you're striking and 1A, which is, you're replacing R with is, incorporated herein as if fully set forth and titled. Those are the corrections.
So if I can clarify that one more time.
We're going to say, be it resolved that the attached plan labeled as Exhibit 1, which is incorporated herein, that's the correction, because there is no 1A.
Is everybody clear on that? Does that require a motion to amend?
It probably should.
Motion amended by Supervisor Eckener, seconded by Supervisor Bruning. Anyone on the issue of the amendment? Seeing no lights, all those in favor of the amendment as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Any further discussion on Resolution 12 as amended? Seeing no other lights, all those in favor of Resolution 12 as amended signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. I was remiss in not recognizing our Senior Assistant Corporation Counsel, Mr. Joe Cardamone, who's here this evening, for all of his sound legal guidance and legal advice through the process. Sometimes I'd look over at him and see him cringe a little bit, but I think generally speaking, the committee followed his advice and looked to him when it was necessary, and I appreciate all of Joe's effort in that regard as well. So I apologize for overlooking you earlier. And just briefly, we will expect plans back from the municipalities within 60 days. And then our time frame to respond to that is what?
60 days. 60 days from that.
60 days from that. So, as I said, our work isn't quite done, but certainly the heavy lifting's been is behind us. Clerk.
Communications from George Melcher regarding future items scheduled before the Planning, Development, and Extension Education Committee.
Refer to Land Use and Extension Committee. I'm sorry.
Claims.
Planning, Development, and Extension. There you go.
Claims, Lorana Mejia, vehicle damage.
Refer to Corporation Counsel.
Ralph Frederick Marcelano, Fourth Amendment right violated while incarcerated.
Refer to Corporation Counsel.
Approval of April 19th and May 3rd, 2011 minutes by Supervisor Ron Frederick.
Supervisor Ron Frederick.
Mr. Chairman, if I get a second, I have to make a note that there was an error in, because Lisanne died in April, the resolutions 142 and 147 were originally marked 142, it should be 1 through 6. And claims 36 and 37 should be 1 and 2.
And
With that note.
And the minutes reflect the correct numbering, right?
Right.
Motion made by Supervisor Ron Frederick to approve the minutes, seconded by Supervisor Michael. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Motion adjourned by Supervisor Noble, seconded by Supervisor Esposito. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed? We're adjourned.